How's it going, everyone? And it sure has been a while since Stefan and I have been able to say this. Welcome to a brand new episode of 27 Outs. Listen, folks, we have a very special guest on the platform here with us. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm feeling better. For those of you who haven't seen our faces in a couple of weeks, I was under the weather. Stefan was under the weather. We're still battling things just a bit, but we got to be here, right? I'm sure you guys could already tell by the face. We got former big leaguer Xavier Scruggs in the building. You might have seen him on your TV early this morning on the leadoff spot with Steve Phillips. You might have heard him on Sirius XM. And heck, maybe you remember him from his playing days with the St. Louis Cardinals, with the Miami Marlins. Not just that. Listen, I've seen him on ESPN. You could also see him on Apple TV. He's done some work with them. Listen, he is all over the damn place, right? Without further ado, Xavier Scruggs, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Hey, fellas, I appreciate you for having me. I'm excited to chop it up with y'all, man, and I'm glad y'all feeling a little bit better, man.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, it's not welcome to the show. It's welcome to the family. This platform is always available for you whenever you got something you want to say. This platform is always available. So I got to start with this, right? We are just about to start the World Baseball Classic, so I have to ask you, what are your feelings on the World Baseball Classic being this time of year? Because I know it stirs up a lot of controversy. Should it be in the middle of the season? Should it be later on?
Yeah.
Like, what are your feelings on it? When would you have it personally? And what do you think about the event overall?
Man, well, first, I would say I love the event. I think it's so special that we get to see all these countries represented. And it may be really the one time we get some of the best talent all coming together at the same time, no matter when the time is. So I love the event. I love the energy. I love the atmosphere that comes along with it. And guys take pride in it, obviously. I think it's tough because there's no perfect time to do it, right? But I think if it was in the middle of the season, players may be more apt to choose to do it, especially the guys that will end up being free agents. A lot of that stuff happening before the season, you ramping up at a time when you're not typically ramping up, at least if it was in the middle of the season, which we could see in the Olympics in 2028, that would be something where players are already in mid-season shape, mid-season form, used to playing. So that may be a more ideal time, but there's no ideal time. That's the truth. But I love it just like everybody else and excited to see who takes the crown this year.
For sure.
Speaking of the World Baseball Classic, Xavier, a lot of people may or may not notice about you, but just a minute ago I mentioned your playing days with the Cardinals, with the Miami Marlins. But you, of course, after your days here in the States playing Major League Baseball, you went overseas yourself to try to pursue a career in Korea, right?
Yeah.
And Korea being one of those teams, if I'm not mistaken, that is involved in this World Baseball Classic. Could you, briefly talk about, what it was like playing baseball over there? Because I'm sure there's some differences aside from language and everything else, right?
Yeah, man, it was a different world. I still felt like I was a big leaguer. Like I was like, man, at the time I didn't really even want to go to Korea. But I felt like it was an opportunity for me and my wife to both have a different experience. Obviously experience a different culture, but also a time to establish myself again as a major leaguer. So we took the leap of faith after a lot of prayer, a lot of thinking about it. And man, it just to answer your question, it was different in the sense that I wasn't able to communicate like I had been for 30 years playing one sport, right? Like, so taking that away, there was advantages and disadvantages. One was like, okay, all I can worry about is going and playing. And I think that freed up my mind a lot. I enjoyed my time. And the second thing is like developing a family, with other guys that you may never have thought you would really develop family ties with. It was really cool. We ended up having our first son born in Korea, and we had a lot of support over there. My wife made a lot of friends over there. So it was a different world, but we basically made it feel like a second home. And now we've been back multiple times and still keep in touch with a lot of our Korean friends.
So I got a question, because Korea is in the Classic.
Yeah.
Point, did any of their officials reach out to you and say, "Hey, man, you want to come play for, if possible, you come play for Team Korea in the Classic if it was at all possible? Would you have considered that during WBC and suiting up for them over there?"
Of course, I think you would have to at any point. Nobody reached out to me, but what's interesting is since my son was born in Korea and he plays baseball, he would be eligible to play on Team Korea during any WBC in which he'd be eligible to play. So, there could be an opportunity one day where he ends up playing for Korea Team WBC. Who knows?
That is awesome. I got one quick follow-up for you.
Mhm.
Now, if you could go back and say, "Man, if I could play for Team WBC, if I could play in the WBC, obviously you'd play for Team America." What do you think about this lineup? What do you think about this team in general? And what do you think about how far they can go in this tournament? What are your feelings about Team USA?
Yeah, I think they can win it. I think they have one of the most dominant rosters amongst all the WBC, and it should be that way. But I also think there's a element of power and speed and defense, which is important. I think that all tools within the game we have an advantage in when you think about the roster. And you don't have to just, if you're manager Mark DeRosa, you don't have to just win one type of way. You don't have to just out bang everybody, right? Like we can steal bases. We can be able to go first to third, first to home. If that means a hit and run, whatever it may be. But also we can dominate from a pitching standpoint. And then I think, seeing guys like Byron Buxton, the way he was running down the baseball yesterday reminds you that defensive athleticism is going to be huge for our team. And I think it could be a huge advantage for Team USA.
Mm. So I know you're constantly covering the game 24/7 across many different platforms and even your own, right? On TikTok, Instagram, you're all over the place, as we said. Are you gonna be like, specifically covering like, any World Baseball Classic stuff, maybe anywhere particular or that we don't know of yet, right? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I'm doing some spring training stuff, but I'm planning on being there for semifinal and final, like when it all comes down to it, right? And I'm hoping Team USA is a part of that, but I'm hoping we get just great competition in general. I know Japan will be after it again. I know Mexico, who lost to Japan in the semifinal, may push themselves far enough. There's a lot of teams that I'm getting excited just the potential of what that could look like. But I'm gonna save my games for semifinal and final down there in Miami.
Sounds like a plan. The old stomping ground. So you good. You know what your way around that terrain for sure.
Definitely. That's basically another home for me. And my in-laws are down in West Palm, so it makes it pretty easy for me.
Nice.
I want to ask one follow-up question, Stephen, before I pass it over to you. So this morning I saw you, talking about the performance that, the Dominican Republic put on last night against the Detroit Tigers when they said, you know what, screw it. Let's just show the entire world what we're capable of. Juan Soto goes yard, Caminero goes yard, and then from top down, it was like a trickle effect, right? So could you talk about something that you love when it comes to, these Latin countries, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico. And also the reason why I ask you that too is because, there was insurance issues, leading up to the World Baseball Classic. And for some of these teams, they unfortunately are not looking as strong as they would have liked heading into the tournament.
Yeah. Puerto Rico definitely not as strong as they should be in Venezuela. But I look at the energy. I look at the vibes in a sense, right? Like that stuff is real. As a former player, you feed off of that. And I think we saw that from Team Dominican Republic last night. We saw the fourth inning and Santo Domingo going crazy like it was a party there. Like, and it's funny that you asked me about that because I was just in the midst before I jumped on with you guys doing a video. I'm about to put out a video just about like why we still do not have regular season games in the Dominican. Like that to me is mind blowing within itself. And like, I understand their biggest stadium is only like 13,000 people or 13,000 seats. But like MLB, if I'm MLB, I'm finding ways to support another baseball stadium down there so we can be able to have our fans see this electric energy on a consistent basis. Like, think about it, we just get little tastes of it during the Caribbean series, during some winter ball highlights. Like, I want that in my veins every night. I need that. So I just think that that's the energy that our fans could get more used to, and I think about that's the way baseball should be played.
That's amazing. It's funny you said that because we actually brought this up on the show last season. This was a conversation amongst the chat and amongst us where we talked about Major League Baseball having to expand to other countries.
Yeah.
And the thought process being expanding and allowing it to be where, like, this is what I thought of. Baseball went over to London. They built fields, they built the stadium, they had things already set up for the London series. Why don't you do for the DR what you did in the London series? Build a field, have stuff set up so you can put more people in the crowd and you can make it an atmosphere where it's a party atmosphere. And this is the thing that I'm wondering with you. Like, do you feel like baseball in general is slow to embrace the other sides of the world in terms of allowing regular season games to be played in those areas? Because the Expos played in Puerto Rico for a time, if I'm not mistaken. Why do you think it's been so long for us for baseball to embrace going back to the DR?
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's a priority. Like, and the reason why, and I think about this with like the NFL, you know, how they're going out to different markets. I think part of it is like they know they got the Latino market no matter what, right? Like, that's where they're going to watch baseball. I think their focus is like, okay, where are the markets that we don't have? So I think that's more of their priority. That's why you see like the London, the European stuff going on, right? That's important for them because they don't have that. So I think there's got to be some sense of like, okay, we need to get over to these other stadiums. I think these other countries. And I think part of it is too, like, the partnerships, right? Like, because everything is about money. So how can we be benefited more from an advertisement or money standpoint by doing a stadium in the Dominican, doing a stadium in Venezuela, doing a stadium in Mexico City, wherever it might be? There's got to be something that brings back that money for Major League Baseball, and that's what it's about, you know. So I think one way to kind of think about it, and I think about this with the youth too, is like, it's all about the brands. Like, if you think about it, brands are pushing that next generation of ball players. They have a lot of the influence. And I think if there's a way we can get brands more involved in pushing baseball in the Latin countries, there's a way to figure something out there.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of crazy because when you think about it, I don't know if I'm going too far by stating this, but I think Major League Baseball is doing a disservice not only to itself, but, you know, to the fans, right? Like, yeah, you are giving these players who come from, you know, various countries across the world an opportunity, but I kind of also think the least you can do is give these guys 2 to 3 ball games in their country, right?
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's something that wouldn't be too far off from Miami, from Tampa, right? The travel wouldn't be that big of a situation. So I don't think it would be something that would be crazy for a schedule. But I do look to, you know, when we start thinking about expansion, which should be a point after this whole CBA stuff. Like, I think you got to take a country like Dominican Republic seriously. Like, there could be an opportunity for a team to be there one day. I think you're right. When you think about the fans, like, they want that energy. Why not find a way to bring it to them on a consistent basis?
And just one more thing too, because I know you were talking about, for example, like in the DR, maybe one of their stadiums only equals to about 13,000 people, right? But one thing for sure is, and we could all sit here and agree with this, those 13,000 sure surpasses the noise level of 40, 50,000 out here in the States. That's for sure.
No question. That's no question at all. That's no question. You almost feel like you at the game through the screen. And I think that's why those games need to be more televised, right? Is because it's like you feel that coming through your screen.
That's what I was going to. One thing I want to ask you is, did you ever think about playing winter ball in the DR, in PR, in the Latin country when you were active? Did you think?
Oh, I played out there. I was out there. Your boy was out there in San Francisco de Macorís playing for the Gigantes for 2 years. I won a championship out there too. So your boy, that's another thing. That's why I know what it's like to be out there on a daily basis too. And I played in Colombia when nobody was playing in Colombia. I played in Mexico. So like the Latin countries, they like the baseball, it holds a special place in my heart because I know what it ultimately means for the players, for the fans, for the families, all that stuff. To me, it's special.
That's beautiful. I got to follow up, man, because you know we all sit here and we was just talking about Team USA and roster construction and things like that, and the defense and how versatile they seem to be. Now you do a show with a former general manager in Steve Phillips,
right?
Do you ever sit there and ask him, "Hey, Steve, in this particular instance, what would you do if you were running said team, whether it's in the big leagues or whether it's for the classic?" Do you ever pick his brain and say, if you were in the GM chair, who do you call? What are you trying to build? Like, what is your thought process?
Yeah, I think that's the type of perspective that I missed while I was playing, because when you're playing, you're so focused on tunnel vision and yourself, and you don't realize that there's a whole bigger picture surrounding you. So I think that's where I really try to get more of that insight. And really, I'm asking him questions during the show. Like, what does this mean as far as arbitration goes? What does this mean for a free agent? To see these types of projections, like asking those questions about the roster construction, because that's where I feel like I'm learning a lot and where I'm really intrigued by those things, man. And his perspective is a lot different than mine. And it's cool to hear his perspective because he's been in the chair. He's done it. He's done it at a young age too. So he had to battle some different things than other older general managers do. So I think it's interesting to definitely get his perspective on so many of those things. And one of the things that we talk about is like, as a GM, he wouldn't want any of his players playing in the WBC. And they're just because that perspective is like somebody's going to get hurt, right? And you don't want it to be your player. So like that's one of those things that you don't think about as a player is like, man, of course I'd want to play. I want pride, USA, whatever on my jersey. I'm all in, but he kind of gives you that perspective of the team and how if somebody gets hurt, that you losing money, like you losing a spot. So all that stuff, definitely I tap in with him about.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, especially being able to sit alongside Steve Phillips on a daily basis. And I'm sure you guys probably have a personal relationship, off the camera. But another thing that I would like to ask you is, so we recently went viral on TikTok, because we put out a clip talking about, perhaps maybe changing, when the World Baseball Classic takes place as opposed to it being in March, as we all know, and maybe doing it in the middle of the season. And as Stefan said a few minutes ago, or maybe you push it towards, the very end after the World Series or something like that, right? And a lot of people, they say, oh, these guys are already ready. They get paid millions of dollars. And you being somebody who is now able to see it from two different standpoints, could you talk about, maybe what that could be like for players if they were to change it? Because Stefan ended up sharing, I thought was an interesting piece by Tariq Skubal. And he said, yo, I certainly can't go out there and be the Tariq Skubal that I want to be in March because that's just not how my body is built. And I don't think he was only speaking for himself. I think a lot of guys feel that way. But I also think a lot of them won't come out and say that because at the end of the day, these guys want to play for their hometown, right?
Yeah. They have think about it, there's a lot of responsibility to play for the team that actually signed you, right? And I think when you start thinking about different times and being able to play in different parts of the season, whether that be early, whether it be middle, late, you're asking players to change up something that they've done for 30 years at least, right? Most of these guys being around 30 years old. So just your body has been trained to do one thing. And think about like these guys train like machines in a sense. It's asking a lot to change up that timeline. And I think a lot of that is more so on the pitchers, right? Because we know how many injuries happen just normally. Think about how many can happen if you change up a routine, a schedule, trying to get ramped up earlier. And I think that's a lot of the concern, because it's your actual, the team that you're playing for, that's your actual livelihood. So like if something changes there and there's an injury there, like you may not have the same livelihood anymore. So as much as I understand and I relate with how fans may say these guys make a lot of money, they can make an adjustment to train and get themselves ready earlier or later, whatever it may be. But don't forget what the main like meal bringer is for them to actually be playing on their team that they've been drafted and that they made it to the big leagues. And that's the main focus. So that's when you hear Tarek Skubal talk about those things, like he might make generational money here pretty soon. And that's going to feed not only his family, but grandkids and grandbabies. Like, so you think about what is the ultimate sacrifice for that. So I think you weigh those things, and it's just more than just a decision to play for your country.
Interesting point. Now, here's the thing that because they're killing me, Xavier. They are killing me on TikTok. They are literally putting me through the ringer.
That's gonna happen no matter what, right?
And I'm cool with it. But hearing it from a former player's perspective, a former big leaguer's perspective that has been in the trenches, it gives you a little bit of a validation in terms of the ability to be like, this is really hard. If everybody, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? It's like sitting like what you're doing now with the media, right? If everybody was media savvy and can handle themselves in front of a camera or a microphone or different things like that, everybody would do it. What are some of the similarities and the differences between your on-field playing career and your media career? Because it feels like while you're not physically playing, it feels like there's a lot of preparation, a lot of mental preparation that goes into being ready to do a show, getting up as early as you do, because we have been following the stories. This brother was up at 5 something this morning. We see you, you know what I'm saying? So what are some of the similarities and what are some of the differences between your that helped you playing into your media career?
I think one is kind of building routine, which I'm sure you guys kind of relate to too. When you're putting a show together, is like, okay, what time do I want to knock this out? Or what day in the week do I want to knock this out? And how can I make that consistent? I think that's one of the things that I learned from playing is like, okay, if I can stick with this routine, it's going to help create discipline, and it's going to make me better as a human being, but also better at doing my job. So I think kind of creating that routine is one of those things. Another one of it is just like, how can I, like, everybody's going to work hard, right? Like, how can I work smarter? Like, what can I find in a way that's going to help me find some things that maybe somebody else can't find? What tools and what resources can that I lean on that can help my day be more efficient and find stories that I want to find? What articles do I need to be reading on a daily basis? Which writers should I be reading more of their stuff and like locking that stuff in? So I think, trying to find ways to be smarter about it instead of just kind of being all over the place. And I think an example of that is like when I first started on the broadcast analyst side of things in 2020, I was trying to like get all the information, right? I was trying to know everything about everything. And ultimately that, you guys probably know, that just bogs up your mind. And so I had to define ways to really develop, okay, what's going to make me efficient? What do I need to go to this site and read these articles, or should I be going somewhere else? Or should I be scrolling on TikTok to see what the latest news is? Like, so I think really trying to define.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, he froze completely.
I think we lost him.
Yeah. Let's see if he comes back.
Let's see if we get him back. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually, he's back. He's back. Sorry about that. You could get back into it. We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, we lost you there for a second.
We got you back now. Oh, again, damn.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you. I got you now.
Okay. No, because what you were saying was, what, to piggyback off your point, to bring it back to you, Xavier, is we do it too. Sometimes we struggle with, what article, what do we read, or where do we go for this piece of information? Like, does being around former players at the network or with people at ESPN, like, you get to work, side by side with perhaps the greatest news breaker in the history of the game right now, and Jeff Passan. Like, do you ever go to him and say, "Hey, Jeff, I'm looking at this particular player, or I'm looking at this particular situation. Do
Yeah.
you have any stories that I can read? Do you have any pieces of information that I can go to as a resource?" What is that like, having somebody like Jeff Passan, close enough where you could just
Yeah.
say, "Hey, man, let me pick your brain about certain situation"?
Absolutely. I think you have to. You would be, dumb not to, right? Like, we be doing shows together and he'd be on the computer during the middle of the break and I'll be looking over and see like, well, what's he typing over there? Well, what story is he about to break over there? So I think leaning on your resources are important. And I think, to go back to your original question, like, baseball, you always leaning on your coaches, your instructors. Like, that's the same thing for me, being someone that's a little bit younger in this space, and having a lot of people to look up to: Eduardo Perez, Carl Ravitch, Tim Kirchin, so many people at MLB Network. When I see, Mark DeRosa doing his thing, Sean Casey, guys breaking it down, Harold Reynolds, like those are guys I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what's that sauce he got? Because I need some of that. Like, let me pick some of this from him, some of this from him, because that's what you're doing in baseball too, is like, okay, what did he say that works for me? What did that instructor say that I can throw out and maybe get something else from somebody else? So, like, always trying to pick something else from somebody, because they're gonna give you the things that have made them consistent over a long period of time.
Speaking of your media career, because I want to go back just a bit, towards like the later days of when you called it quits with your
Mhm.
Major League Baseball career. Um, could you share like what it felt like for you to have to, call it quits, right? That, I'm sure that was your dream ever since you
Yeah.
were, who knows how young, right? And to say, listen, I tried my hardest. I think I went as far as I could, and now I have to figure out what's next, because you've been in media now for a few years.
Yeah.
I've seen your interview on Eric Hosmer's podcast,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of people think that because you played at the big league level, a lot of this stuff is just handed to you, right? I'm sure you've heard that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So could you talk about what it felt like having to wrap up your career as a baseball player to now being, I would say, a role model and a successful, figure in media when it comes to covering the game.
No, that's love. I appreciate those words. And I think, it was tough because nobody ever wants to be done playing, right? Like, not many people are like, okay, this is going to be the last day. Let's move on. Like, no, everybody pretty much stops playing when somebody else tells them to stop. So it's always a tough transition. But I think what helped my transition was, like, really the year 2020, when it seemed like a horrible year. um, I wasn't finding a job. I tore my Achilles, but at the same time, ESPN started playing Korean baseball games on their broadcast, and they asked me to come on and talk about my experience of playing in Korea for 10 minutes. And I realized during those 10 minutes, like, man, that got me hyped. Like, I like talking about baseball. And then I asked for if there was more opportunities to do that, and did it. And and then they asked me to do a full Korean game. And then I was kind of like, okay, maybe God is steering me in a different direction, and maybe media and broadcasting and analyst work is something that I can thrive in, and try to just seek more opportunities with that, and take advantage, and try to at least find out if it's something that I'd be good at or something that I'd like. And but if 2020 didn't happen, like, I wouldn't have that opportunity. So I tried to hone in on my skills with radio, because in radio you got to talk for 2 to 3 hours, and you really start to learn how to use your mind in a different way, because sometimes you got to fill up a lot of that time on a certain subject. So I think just being able to have the repetitions and increase those reps doing different things, whether it be podcast, radio, TV, and still trying to do those things is what ultimately gave me an advantage, and want to stick with it.
That's interesting because we actually come from a radio background. 27 Outs actually started as a college radio program. So
That's
when you talk
cool.
about those marathon radio sessions, we would be at the station for about 2 or 3 hours doing shows. So when you talk about like those trying to figure out different ways to think of different things to talk about or
Mhm.
extend a point, we get it completely. Now, being as successful as you are in this space and having this type of footprint, do you often ask yourself, man, I wish there was more African American representation, more Latino representation? Because it does seem like there's starting to be more.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that baseball can do to even bring a broader appreciation for the African American community and the Latin community that are big parts of baseball?
Yeah,
What
I
what
think
can they do?
yeah, I think just serving more opportunities for people to know what's out there and what's available. A lot of times we get focused on just like a play-by-play or an analyst or a sideline reporter when there's so much going on from a media space standpoint now. Like think about these teams have like their own YouTube channels that have like full movies on them now. So there's like so many opportunities, but I think you know allowing people to understand what's available, making sure those things are being posted, making sure that you having those sessions where people can come and learn how to break into the industry. Those workshops. I think continuing to push as much of those as possible because I think awareness is ultimately the key for people to find success. Like there's like the way that our world is moving is that like social media is so big now, but now it's like, okay, I need a social media assistant now that can help me do some clips over here. I need somebody to help that person gather up the right players and the right people. So I think there's so many jobs, but I think a lot of times people don't understand how much aware those jobs are available. And I think just continuing to knock on doors too. So I don't think it's just baseball's job, but I think it's our job too, especially as minorities, to figure out, okay, let me not let one no deter me from going to the next place, and just continuing to diversify yourself and figure out, okay, how can I be unique? Because that's one thing too, is like, we think a lot of times we got to be one specific way, but I think now in today's media space, like it celebrates uniqueness and really freshness. And I think continuing to find ways to diversify and kind of separate yourself is going to be huge.
Considering the many different, companies that you've worked for or continue to work for, right? Because the reason why I ask this too is because Stefan and I, we have a lot of conversations off the air, when we're not talking to the chat and whatnot. And one thing that really amazes me when it comes to you, and also another guy who I think you're friends with as well, Keith McPherson. I've
Mhm.
spoken to him about the same thing. We're boys with him too.
It's
But
awesome.
how do you find time to sit down and say, hey, you know what? I've done work for, MLB Network. I've done my work with Apple TV. I've done my work here. How do you say, listen, today is time for me to work on Xavier Scruggs, right?
Mm,
Because I think a lot of people, they go do their 8 hour, their 10 hour shift. And then when they go home, there's nothing else up
yeah.
until they go back to work the very next day. But with you, it kind of feels like, because we're on the outside looking in, right? It
Mhm.
kind of feels like you're constantly like having to come up with different ideas, not only for the people that you work for, but also for yourself, right? Because to go back to what you just said, media, it's very different now. It's not what it once was, once upon a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. No, that's good. I got some really good advice back in 2020 when I first kind of started getting into this space from Andre Hawkins, and he said, X, man, whatever I could tell you is like don't stop creating stuff for yourself. No matter what, there's always going to be these big name networks. There's always going to be people that may give you a platform, but you've got to be able to use your own platform and be able to stay creative in that sense. And it's one platform that people can't take away from you. So I continue to think about, okay, how can I do things that maybe I can't do on an ESPN or MLB network, and maybe something I've tried to bring to the forefront or give them an idea, and maybe they don't run with it right away. Okay, well, I'm not going to waste time. Let me run with it, and I'll put it on my own platform. So I think that's one way, is trying to stay creative, and then also just, knowing that it's kind of what helped me get into the space is like, trying to find something different, trying to just do it for the love, right? Because obviously doing it for ESPN and MLB Network, you doing it for a paycheck, but I want to do things for the love too, like, because I love this game, and I find myself now even trying to gear towards like the information and education for the youth. So just, I feel like that stuff is important for me.
What is calling the Little League World Series done for Xavier Scruggs in terms of trying to see what the youth are doing? Because sometimes we get so lost in this is what they're doing in big league clubhouses and
Yeah.
in all over the big leagues, and the pros do it this way. What are some things you learned by covering the little leaguers and their perspective on the game and their youthful exuberance for the game? Has it changed the way you look at things?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It keeps it in perspective, and
Right.
it reminds me that it's all about joy and love for the game. Like, that's why we all doing this, is like, because we love watching the game. Like, we really enjoy it. So I think seeing where all the kids come from too, as far as their stories, right? Like, whether that
Mhm.
be the US teams, the teams from different countries, like, I love hearing the stories and getting to know that, like, everybody got something going on that you may not even have any idea about. One that comes to mind, like, we got the Czech Republic. I'm usually on the international side. We got Czech Republic on that side, and they not a huge, great baseball program, but at the same time, they had some kids that were like defecting from another country, trying to just fit in with some of the players on the team. So
Mm.
like, so many of those little stories that happen that you just don't even realize are important and what people are going through. So I think that's what's cool for me. That gives me another perspective. And then ultimately, my kids are like, they're little league age now. So like, everything that I get to see from the major league level, I've got to find some way to communicate it. And I get to do that for little league. So like, now I figure out, okay, if I can communicate to the little league audience and communicate and see the little leaguers do it, maybe that helps me with my own kids. And it definitely has.
So
I got Go ahead,
follow
go
up
ahead.
real quick. So has there ever been a moment where you're watching your kids play or you're watching little leaguers play? And I'm laughing because it's almost like you're living two dreams, right? You're living your own dream, former big leaguer that's covering the game
Yeah.
so nationally now, right? Where it's like, damn, but I'm also living my kid's dream too, because I get to see the youngins do it at such a proficient level that as a dad, is it easier to teach them? Is it harder? Because kids think they know it all. Daddy, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that balance like for you?
No, it's tough. It's not easy. I got to remind myself that they not major leaguers every day. But trying to enjoy the time. I think, like, when I remind myself, like, enjoy this time, because, whether or not they get it or they get upset or they happy, the time is more important than anything. So I think just trying to keep that perspective, and know that, I can't live through them. They got their own people. They're gonna have their own strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's what I'm learning more and more as a father, and
Mm.
trying to communicate that, and and lean on my past experiences, because I'm hoping that those things can help them too.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that story about, being a dad, Xavier, because I myself, I'm a father too, to a 2-year-old. Shout out to my son,
That's
Lorenzo.
awesome.
He's not feeling well right now. He's under the weather, but he's gonna be fine, right? But the reason why I mentioned that is because I've been following you, for some time. I think well over a year now or so, something like that. And I see what you do throughout the day, and then all of that just not goes out the window, literally in a bad way, but it's time for you to be a dad, right? When it's all said and done, when the sun goes down, you gotta feed the kids, gotta bathe them.
Uh-huh.
So with as busy as you are, right? Could you talk about, what it feels like to have to finally like settle down and say, you know what? as much as I love baseball,
Yeah.
now is the time to just zero in on being a dad, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because I found myself like I hit 7 spring trainings in 7 days over the past week, and
Mm.
then yesterday I found myself like just sitting on the couch with the kids, just enjoying watching. I forget we was watching like Home Alone clips, something random on YouTube or whatever. But I took a step back and I was like this is those times that you have to find balance for, right? And because they make you better as a person, they make you better at your job. But I think figuring out, okay, what's like, it kind of goes back to that routine thing too, because it's like if I figure out what the right routine is for myself and why I need to wake up at 5 a.m. so I can be better and have more time for my kids, like I think it ends up being better for the family, and it ends up like allowing me to compartmentalize baseball and family and other aspects of life too. But I think it's not always going to be 50-50 balance. Some days maybe 75, some days maybe 25. But I think somebody told me, I think maybe even Eduardo Perez, just like understanding, be where your feet are, be present in the moment. And I think that's what kind of continues to give me that joy, is like, okay, I can be present with the family, I can be present at the ballpark, I can be present doing the TV thing, I can be present chopping it up with y'all, because I think figuring out that routine has helped that.
That's great, man. And I gotta give this guy credit because he's a great dad. So to watch him be on his journey with me and having to do the dad thing,
It's awesome.
I can't even fathom what that's like in terms of trying to balance the two. And he does a great job of doing both. So that's a really interesting insight. Now I got a question for you. This is a fun one. So Xavier Scruggs is sitting on the couch. There's a baseball game on, and you're just sitting there chilling. You're not working the game. You're at the house. You're hanging out.
Yeah.
What are we snacking on, man? What's Xavier Scruggs' like guilty pleasure watching a game? And when you
Watching the
watch a
game.
game on TV, can you watch it as a fan, or are you breaking down? Damn, he shouldn't have thrown that pitch in that spot, or he shouldn't have swung at that. Like, what is that like when you're just sitting at the house?
I think I can watch it as a fan. And I think there's been multiple times where I'll be chilling. I think the snack of choice, like of course I love popcorn. I think that's one of the snacks of choice when watching the game. I'm a big Doritos guy. Like I know I shouldn't be, but I love Doritos. Like not spicy nacho or go to. I just I'm not like I'm not a huge snacker during baseball. That's the only thing. So I love to eat, but when I'm watching baseball, I'll be like locked in. So like it's hard for me to be eating. Um, but like I can watch it as a fan and I can watch it as an analyst. I think I'm always naturally like dissecting the game, but I think, if I'm sitting and watching Ronald Acuna Jr., which I did the other day, like I'm not gonna let my mind just be spinning about, okay, what is his launch angle and what the hard hit rate and what's the count. No, I'm gonna just sit and watch him do his thing, because there's certain players that you just gotta enjoy watching it while it's happening, because it's something special.
I got one final question, Stefan, and if you want to wrap it up, feel
Yeah,
free.
for sure.
One thing that we like to ask, people such as yourself and some of the other people who we had on the platform, right? Because you're new here, right? And hopefully we could do this again in the future.
Mhm.
But we've had Heath Bell, former relief pitcher.
That's
We've had
cool.
Keith McPherson. We've had reporters on the show. And one thing that we like to ask you guys is if there's one piece of advice that you could share with people who are maybe, trying to do this or just trying to pursue anything in life, right? Because,
Yeah.
As Stefan shared with you, before we went live here, was that we've been doing this for 2 years now, right? Really longer if you go back to like our college days. So we really
Yeah.
began in
Right.
2016. But,
Yeah.
when it comes to sharing it on social media and whatnot, it's been 2 years now. But if you had to share a piece of advice with maybe a younger Xavier Scruggs, right? Or maybe anyone who just wants to pursue anything nowadays, what is that thing that you would tell them?
Yeah. Man, I think that's good. That's tough. And it's funny because I ask people the same thing, right, with my job. But I think one of the things I would tell them is like it's okay to be different. Like, people celebrate uniqueness. And I think mentioned that earlier, but I think from a media standpoint, like, trying to find ways that you can everybody wants to do a podcast, right? Everybody wants to do this, that, and the third, but like, how is yours going to be different? And so that's kind of like the one question that always pops into my head is like, how can I do this different? I know everybody going to jump on this trend, but how can I do it different? So I think that's one of the things I think about. But like, even as like a past player, and even as I walk through like family life, one thing my dad always told me that it kind of sticks with me too is like, just don't have any regrets, right? Like, so if I look back, I don't want to be able to say, and you guys asked me about my career, and like, I have zero regrets because I feel like I did everything I needed to do. So, like, whatever that time period is that you doing something, whatever endeavor, like, make sure you don't have any regrets because the last thing you want to do is look back and be like, man, I wish I did this a little different, or I wish I did this. So if you take care of business, like, you won't be saying that, and you can be okay, and you can sleep at night when you don't have any regrets.
That's awesome. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot, Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
If you final question, if you had to build your baseball Mount Rushmore, who's on it?
Dang, man, that's tough. Okay, so this is my Mount Rushmore. So don't have everybody cracking on me because this is mine. Okay, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, and Barry Bonds. I think that's who I would have for mine. So it's tough because I don't have any of today's players, but I think those are the guys that when I think about Mount Rushmore, like that's who set the tone for me. And there's a reason why they all African American for sure.
Barry Bonds, he was actually the hitting coach, if I'm not mistaken, when you were with the Marlins, right?
Yes, he was. He was my hitting coach. The 1 year he was a hitting coach, he was my hitting coach. And man, it was, you talk about different perspective, opening your eyes to different things. That man spoke a different language and it was a reason why he was the GOAT. Honestly, there's a reason why.
Well, man, this has been a pleasure. We kept you longer than we should have, I'm sure. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it so much. And we got to have you on again, man. Sometime maybe during the season when stuff is, kind of slow and you ain't got that much going on. But in your world,
yeah, let's do
that's
it.
Impossible because you always got something going on.
Nah, everybody always got something going on. So I'm glad to do it.
Thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. And let the people know where they can follow you. Obviously, your links are going to be in the video, but let people know, give people a taste of where they can follow you and things like that.
Yeah, I think, just tapping in with me in the morning. You guys mentioned it, the leadoff spot, 7 to 10 a.m. on MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM, or we simulcast on MLB Network TV at 9 o'clock, 9 to 10. So I think that long form is where you get a good sense of kind of who I am. So I think tap in with that.
Sounds good. Thanks again, Xavier. We appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all.